Welcome back as we delve into the world of unsolved crimes. In this episode, we bring you an investigation led by our psychic investigator, who will take us through some of the most baffling cases of all time. With her unique abilities, she sheds new light on each case and provides her own theories and opinions that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew. Get ready to have your mind blown as we explore the twists and turns of these unsolved crimes that will undoubtedly rock your world.
On January 15, 1947, the body of aspiring actress Elizabeth Short was found brutally murdered in Los Angeles. Short's body was cut in half, and her face was sliced from the corners of her mouth to her ears, leaving a grotesque smile. Among the long list of suspects were doctors, a police officer, and even a woman. But despite numerous leads, the case remains unsolved to this day. Now, when I've worked with police in the past, typically what I've done is to just give as much data on a particular case as I can, providing a physical description, motive, and key facts about the case as I see them. From there, if the investigating officer chooses to provide a photo lineup or additional information for clarification, he or she can, but I prefer to work in a vacuum without having access to physical evidence or a crime scene. These are all just high-level bird's-eye views of these cases and not meant to be comprehensive investigations. They represent my opinion and are for entertainment purposes only. Elizabeth Short's killer was a white male with fair coloring and narrow facial features. His hair was stringy and greasy and long like a hippie. I suspect he was in his late 30s. He's a medium build and has a body type that I would classify as a fat-thin. Lots of fat but no muscle. He was a true cold-blooded psychopath who enjoyed cutting things, possibly practicing on dolls or small animals before attempting it on a human. He lived in an apartment or home close to Elizabeth and was able to watch her closely and plot his crime from the second or third floor. I suspect that he was living with someone, perhaps his aunt, because he was very careful to keep his room clean and tidy and leave no evidence of what he was plotting. On the night of Elizabeth's abduction and murder, he subdued her by nearly strangling her to death, but not quite. I imagine that she was a very small girl because he had no problem lifting her limp body and carrying her away to what appears to be the basement of his residence nearby. Once there, the young girl woke up and began screaming in pain, and this is where I see that he was concerned about someone in the upper floors hearing them. So to keep things quiet, he quickly finished the job and murdered her, so she would not have suffered through extensive torture. Once the deed was done, he wrapped the body in a sheet and took it to his car where he carefully placed her in the trunk, taking the time to admire his handiwork. It was easy to find a remote place to drop her remains, and he did so, then returned home to hose down the basement. This man had planned to commit another murder but was arrested and jailed for something else. Considering what this man was capable of, the women of Los Angeles were lucky this time. In 1996, 6-year-old child beauty pageant queen JonBenet Ramsey was found murdered in the basement of her family's home in Boulder, Colorado. The case gained national attention, with many speculating that her parents were involved in her death. However, no one has ever been charged in connection with the crime. If you've watched my old YouTube video on this subject from several years ago, you know that I suggested that it was Bill McReynolds, or Santa Claus Bill, who murdered the young JonBenet. John Ramsey, the child's father, even pointed to the fact that Santa Claus Bill signed the actual ransom note that was left behind with his initials, SCB. Now, here's the interesting thing, and it goes to motive. Many thought the motive was revenge of a jealous mother or the sexual assault of a pedophile father, but these theories never panned out. However, there was an actual ransom note demanding money, and this is what I believe the whole thing was about: money and jealousy of a man who envied the success of the Ramseys. On the night of the murder, McReynolds waited in his car until the parents' bedroom light went out, and then entered the house initially through a first-floor window. If you look at the floor plan of this house, you can see that it was like a giant maze. So he would have had to have known the lay of the land, and he did. Now keep in mind that this all happened on Christmas, so he could have easily coaxed a young child out of the house with the promise of visiting the North Pole to get lots of presents from Santa. From there, she was taken to his waiting car, but once inside, she panicked, and that's when he had a change of heart and killed her. So the kidnapping plan was off, and he returned her to the home, but forgot to take the ransom note when he fled. This is just a summary of the events as I see them, and it can get confusing because there were multiple points of entry and exit by the killer, a ransom note, yet a body was hidden in the basement, so it just didn't add up. This type of case would be especially confusing for incompetent police and investigators, and the media who were driving the mania. I'll be doing a deeper dive into this in a future video, but suffice it to say, I've never believed that any of the family members had a thing to do with this murder. In 2007, 3-year-old Madeleine McCann vanished from her family's holiday apartment in Praia da Luz, Portugal. Despite a massive international investigation, no trace of her has ever been found, and to this day, her parents have denied any wrongdoing. This case has really bothered me from the beginning, and I shied away from it because of the nature of the crime. But there's one thing for sure, and that is I've never wavered on what I think happened to this child. I believe she was murdered by her father, and her mother disposed of the body. It's just that simple. The father, Jerry, had an explosive temper and just went crazy, beating the little child in the head. I suspect that he had what experts call intermittent explosive disorder, which can actually be treated. In any case, he did a lot more to the child's head, which I really can't specify here because it's incredibly gruesome. So the damage to the child's body would have been so overwhelming that the parents would have had to concoct a story, and this is where Mom came in. Upon realizing what her husband had done, Kate, the child's mother, took control. She put the child's small body in a large suitcase and rolled her out to the car where she loaded her inside. From there, she was able to find what appears to be some sort of storm drain in a remote area and put her body there, being careful not to leave the suitcase. Now, if you're screaming that it's not fair that I accuse these parents who have worked tirelessly to keep the hope of finding their daughter alive, I say, gee, perhaps they shouldn't have been so careless with the welfare of their young child in the first place, especially while on vacation in a foreign country. Furthermore, these two have been suspects in this case, and many who still follow their public appearances just aren't buying their story. Sadly, I don't believe that the child's remains will ever be recovered. That is until Kate eventually confesses, and she will. So there you have it. Be sure to stay tuned for more unsolved crimes, global predictions, and psychic insights into your favorite celebrities.